Instead of the front of the table.
Test.
Big soap.
Test. am.
Raining.
Get home before it started.
Yes, well, a little bit, yeah.
It's
Sorry.
not that man that's gone anyway.
That was my belly.
So Derek, I don't know who's gonna be there. They definitely won't be here now.
Yeah, I don't blame them. Blame
Probably that storm.
barometric pressure.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
That's exciting for them.
Do they know what they're having?
Good question. I don't know.
Don't think so.
I will here soon.
All right, it is 6 o'clock. I will go ahead and call this meeting to order. Can I have a motion to declare this an open meeting?
Make a motion to declare an open meeting.
Second,
Motion by Bobby, second by Hannah, sorry. Voting Hannah,
yes.
Bobby,
Yes.
Hope,
Yes.
Julia,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Jason, yes. The other end opens. We don't have any visitors in house, but if you might online. As per the law, the Board of Education does adhere to the Opens Meeting Act. A copy of that act is posted to the wall to my right. This meeting has been properly advertised according to policy and the Nebraska Opens Meeting Act. We have on our agenda, we have public comment, sorry. I don't see anybody here for public comment, so we'll just skip over that and go on to our special business. Consider an additional alternative HVAC bid for primary high school VRF HVAC project bid winner University AC Incorporated as presented. Additional alternate bid number 1 to add RTU units to the gymnasium for HVAC in place of the boiler system in the gym for $295,685. And number 2, additional bid number 2 to replace the gymnasium boiler with a high efficiency boiler, replace classroom heaters and fan coil units for $1,115. Oh, and then do you want to go on the fees? Want me to read all that too? Or do we want to do?
I think these would probably be done so.
Okay.
And even A could be split up into A1 and A2, probably. If there was a desire to do that, they could be done together as well, if there was a desire to do that. Just a little bit of history here. I think everyone knows this, but maybe for our viewers at home, we, of course, last at the regular board meeting in June, approved the bid, and there is a copy of the bid from Front Heating and Air Conditioning in the packet, and we approved their bid for the primary project for $501,550. That is to replace the VRF system in the high school building. And we felt very good about that number. When Greg had done his study on the system, I think the number he had put in was 680. Yes. Yeah, 680,000. So to get a number to come in that low was very good. And the way that Greg wanted to set up the bid document was to have the 2 other portions of it be ad alternate. So the ad alternate 1 would be in addition to the main bid, would be for the air conditioning for the gymnasium. and that came in at $295, $685, and that was based on doing the size that we decided not to go to the full size to save a little bit of the cost, but to do if we on the specs do 2 rooftop units, each one 15. Is that right?
10.
They bumped it up. We should clarify that. That was all Greg. That's what we
We
had.
discussed 15 at one point.
And I think it wasn't so much for the air conditioning, it was for the heating side of things, was why he ultimately landed there. And the Building and Grounds Committee was involved with all of those emails, so they were getting inundated with emails. I'm sure we're overwhelmed with that, so I apologize for that. Did I not put that in here? I thought I had it in here. Maybe I don't. I'll look into that while you're talking to clarify that. Okay.
Some tiny writing.
It is tiny.
I don't know if I can.
I can't make it out. Well, nonetheless, if you, we that was an add alternate one from Rudd's Heating and Air Conditioning, and the second part was for the boiler system. We would replace the boiler system. So if we did the air conditioning, then we'd have to make a decision on the boiler. We can either leave the existing boiler and the boilers into the gym would be capped off, and the existing coils would only heat the remaining room. So they provide heat for the band room, the locker rooms, and then the 3 rooms upstairs. The teammates room is installed, the PE room, and then the ball storage room would get continue to get their primary heat from the boiler. Of course, that would be way more of a boiler than what we need for that size of an area. So the conversation was, should we go ahead and look at replacing that at the same time too? Of course, that's an additional cost. We know from Greg's campus assessment of our HVAC system that he has some major concerns with how much longer the current boiler is going to last. It's 49 years old. It's an original it's 51 years old. It's original 1974 boiler from when the building was built. And so it's about the age that the high school boiler, it was a 69 boiler that was put in the boiler room. It's about the age it was when it did. So it seems plausible that we could have you have to have inspections every other year. It seems possible that any future inspection that could potentially not pass inspection. To avoid getting into a situation like we had in the high school where we didn't pass inspection, we had to make some decisions faster than what we wanted to. I would say that the boiler needs, regardless of what's done with the air conditioning in the gymnasium, the boiler probably needs to be addressed in the near future proactively rather than waiting for it to not pass inspection. That way you don't have your backs up against the wall. And we get life out of that thing. Very, very little maintenance that's gone into it. But that's beyond 50 years is probably not going to be sustainable.
Do you think it wouldn't pass just simply because of age?
Well, it's not the age in and of itself. So they've got tubes in them. I don't know exactly how that all works, but they take it apart and they look at the tubes, they look at the wear, they look at they over time they build up smudge, stuff at the bottom, and if it doesn't check all the boxes, it needs to be repaired, cleaned out, replaced. We got to that point, if you recall, the price tag on just repairing the boiler for the high school was going to be right at 50,000, I believe. So it could, but then you're repairing a 50-year-old boiler. And the conversation then into, well, what do boiler cost? Then we were into 140,000, I believe, maybe 120 or 140. Then the conversation became, well, if it's gonna cost that much to do a whole new boiler, what about high efficiency boilers that just circulate water rather than a steam boiler? Well, then the problem was we didn't have a source of heat for the auditorium, which led into the RTU for the auditorium, and the rest is history. Of course, that all had to happen quick and leave us a very wide window to bid, probably not get the best price that we could have. And as a result, maybe pay a little more than what we should have. Hopefully in this situation, we can be a little more proactive. I tend to think, and Greg, when I talk to him, says you're never going to see numbers this good again. These numbers, we got a really good deal. I think the market is very favorable to us right now to do these types of projects, because if you think back a few years, you can get rests. We personally invited them to bid and they wouldn't come. And now they're coming to looking for business, which means that they're a little slow, which is great for us. They were also very competitive on their numbers. Numbers a couple years ago would have come in a lot higher. With Freon changing at the end of the calendar year, those numbers will continue to creep up, plus all of the issues that are going on in the world, whether it's tariffs, attacks. Iran has, one of the ways they can retaliate is they have control over a lot of waterways. And we recall what the now did to wine during the time. I do think there's an argument to be made that spending this money now could actually be cost savings down the road, even the air conditioning side of things. I do think the question arises, will this be good enough cooling? I think what we've talked about, if it drops the temperature in the gym 20 degrees and takes the humidity out, it's going to be huge, even if it's 80 degrees on a 100-degree day.
It's also going to put fresh air into the gym now.
Right. But it has economizer, so it only puts the minimum amount necessary so that it's not wasting a lot of energy cooling hot air. They have to bring in fresh air, but they don't have to bring in all fresh air. It's a mix of, so you're not wasting too much heat.
It just recools the cooler already.
Right.
It just cools faster rather than bringing outside hot air, like full hot air. It's like your car if you put it on.
Mhm.
It does the same thing. It recirculates the air inside that's already been cooled rather than pulling in the hot air outside. I think there's a level 2 though. It still pulls.
It does, but depending upon the temperature outside, there's a certain percentage that has to be. I've had the guy, Steve has explained it to me with Grunwald, and Greg explained it to me that there's a certain percentage of it that has to be fresh air, but they want to minimize that during high temperatures, maximize it during moderate temperatures to get the right balance of energy efficiency.
Big thing that we do is one thing that we have. As we units would take that out of the gym completely.
So right now, in not touching general fund, we're in pretty good shape. General fund, we'll end the year cash on hand on the 1st, on September 1st, north of $2 million. And that does include the money that's at the county treasurer, but still, that's how the law works. Is you have to include the money that's at the county treasurer on the 1st of the month. So we got good cushion in general fund. I don't think it would be wise to pay for this out of general fund, but I tell you that just to let you know that we're in a good position that if we spend down some of our build what I call contingency funds, our building fund and our depreciation fund, we could continue day operations just fine for the foreseeable future out of general fund. So there is enough money. Both these projects qualify that they could be paid for entirely from depreciation or entirely from building fund. So you can pay for either either or both of those funds. And of course, we discussed financing. And so I did do some research on financing. This would qualify as a QC Puff project, and you could finance up to the total amount through QC Puff. That would constitute about 2.9 at current valuation, 2.9 cents on the levy for districts. Can't go above 3 cents on the levy. You could do less than that. I do in the package have a copy of a sample resolution. That's item B on the agenda. There is a copy of the sample resolution that could be voted on. And I do have it. It's the same as you have, I believe, as a signed and notarized affidavit validating that this qualifies as a QC project. It has to just be justifiable because it has to serve safety purposes. And that needs to be signed off on by a certified engineer, which is what we have.
When was the last time we had an inspection on the boiler and the gym? Was that 2 years ago?
Do you remember when the last time we paid that bill? Can you look it up? I'm thinking it was 2 summers ago. Probably.
Well, she's looking that up. Is this proposed start date September 1st? Is that right?
Yeah, the start
For the high
date,
school too?
but their timeline, and that was one of the things that really sets Red apart from the ground wall, was they were able to, per their bid, be substantially done by December 1st. And that was on.
I wanted to push back until next year.
So they actually said, if you want that sooner, you'll have to pay more. You're gonna have to pay guys overtime.
The rut said they could do it, all of it, with no. But that's something to pay.
Which is again, probably why we got good numbers, because they're looking for work.
Yeah, 100%.
Without causing child disruption in school day-wise, hopefully.
Yes, I think they had some conversations about that, about rotating through classrooms, having their guys work later hours in the day. They didn't seem concerned about that at all. And we utilized Red so much in the past 6 years working on the system anyway. They probably replaced it in terms of man-hours. And so their guys are familiar with our system. And I know that the funding things is a separate item, but I think it really feel comfortable with, if there is a motion and a vote, it's probably appropriate, prudent to discuss that now too, because they go hand in hand. I know Mr. Evans, I know some of you wanted to hear from Mr. Evans, some of your thoughts on that. I need to put you on the spot.
Sure.
But he's done some work on numbers as well.
I watched your board meeting and then I saw, I want to hear what Mr. Evans said. Okay.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah, so, but that's a good thing. And I don't, I won't tell anybody how to vote on this. I think that, the best thing to do is to put it on a balance scale and weigh it out. And I don't know what the experience has been with the gym not being air conditioned. I don't know what issues that's caused. I know I would say that I'm probably part of the first air conditioned generation where most homes were getting air conditioned about the time I was growing up. So I think that there is a bit of an expectation there. But I don't know what you hear about taxes, because I know that that's something that a lot of why you're here is to represent the taxpayers, and I respect that. So I think that's what I would say is try to weigh things out as much as you can, and that's going to weigh differently for each of us. So I guess my thoughts are, the question in front of you is, do you vote for the American? think that is the question. Because I don't think you're going to have a better chance than now for the future. And if you're comfortable with that situation, then that's what that is. I do think, just like what was said, this is the best case scenario on the bids that came in. It's not going to get better. I feel very strongly about that. Now, with that said, I hate borrowing money. I do, and I do it, and I have to, and I know that that's a necessary part of what we do. I took a document Brian had shared with me, and I really rely on his expertise on the Nebraska finance system. Mine is still pretty rudimentary, that I've got silos in my head. There's the general fund, there's the depreciation fund, and so forth. But it gets a lot more specific than that. And I don't know if you've shared this information.
This,
Please.
Thank you.
So in looking at funds that you have available, you have enough on hand to finance the whole thing, but you've got nothing left for emergency. And that's not a good place to be. So I think that the boiler, and I've been in a building with a boiler that's not working, and that we're doing emergency work on, and we're moving electric heaters in the classrooms, just trying to keep them at 50, 60 degrees. So that is something that I do think you want to be proactive about. And I think the question comes down to air conditioning. The numbers in the dollar amounts in the left-hand column are information that Mr. Ridinghouse has provided. And he and I talked a little bit, because when I think about your major expenses, the first thing I think of is roofs. And it sounds like you're in pretty good shape with roofs. You've got one that's open, that could cause problems that you might need to be aware of for the future. But that is a high dollar item that I think that when you think about the continued, you want to have that set aside. On this, I went ahead and put in the high school VRF. I threw the actual cost in. That was an estimated cost that was in there before. And we take a look at the difference between receipts and expenditures if we move out the boiler and the RTUs for the gym. If we move those out, that still leaves you of a cushion of $384,405. Now, I'm talking to Mr. Ridinghouse, the transfers into the depreciation fund, that isn't an exact science.
no,
It's
absolutely not.
75,000 a year. That's going to ebb and flow depending on some different factors.
So generally, when you build a budget, you build in a little bit of cushion, not a lot. Most years you want to have a little bit of cushion. Some of that'll be dictated by circumstances. This year in particular, there wasn't any cushion, and I hope I had articulated that pretty well last fall at the budget hearing as to why that was. A couple of reasons, actually. One was that we have pretty good cash on hand, general fund, to start the fiscal year. Two is because to go any more on receipts, we would have to go to the big poster hearing, and I thought, let's push that off as long as possible. Because everything I've been told is mostly people who have their valuation going up in those hearings, and we don't have anything to do with that, but people don't know that, right? And so we go to we have to send board members to the district hearing with the county and SBC and listen to protests about things that we have no control. And it's like, let's not do it until we have it. I think I've been very clear that that's inevitable, that is going to come at some point, that we didn't see an influx of federal funds for a few years, and that has allowed us to put our levy down a little bit lower than what it historically been. I feel it's better to give a temporary reprieve to the taxpayers, even if it's only for a short period of time. I do think it'll need to inch back up. I think it'll have to go drastic. I would anticipate a levy around 90 cents in that ballpark, which is still lower than it has historically been. I would point out as well that, kind of getting off topic here, I'll circle back, I promise. If you think back, we look at our total tax request over the past 9 years, it's gone up by less than 1% per year over the last decade. Not too many districts, school districts, not too many government subdivisions can say that they kept their tax request at less than 1% increase over a decade. The board has done that. So I think if people say we're spending like Trump say, which is not true. We've been very fiscally responsible. We're the last district around to even have a conversation about air conditioning. I eat through the money as much as the rest of you do. I really do. And that's why we've got for the last 9 years, hoping that maybe we could do something big. And so going back to that, I ran a tight budget this year. I knew we'd probably spend more when August rolled around. Our total expenditures would probably exceed total receipts by a small amount, and they probably would. So this is not a good year, probably end of the year transfer. It's happened before. I was telling Mr. Evans going into the 17-18 fiscal year, we lost $500,000 in state aid and valuation down 4.5%. We had to do cuts. We didn't do any transfers. Fortunately, we had been proactive and a couple nutrition cuts the prior years and well situated for that set of circumstances. Now we have got a lot more cushion in our general fund than we did to absorb, a one-time correction like that if it were to happen again. Not being equalized anymore, the likelihood of seeing a yo-yo phenomenon in the budget is not going to be there. So what I'm saying is it seems probable that when you build a budget, you're going to build in a little bit of cushion most years. This was just one of those years that didn't happen. And over the past, at least in my 9 years and then the few years before, usually we've ended the fiscal year in the black and either been able to build up general fund and or transfer some of it to depreciation. And over these last few years, we've been able to do both of those things. And so it's put us in a much more favorable position, both with cash in general fund, operating, and a little bit of money in contingency reserve for building grounds and transportation tax expenses. I know that was a long answer, but that most years you're going to have a little bit of cushion that you maybe not for the 25-20 at the end of the 24-25 fiscal year.
Going back to the roof, we had a leak in the gym again this last year. Is that totally resolved?
We have, so the gym, the EPDM surface on the gym was done in 22 or 23. And I think it's very reasonable to assume that it'll get 25 years. That's what the previous one had gotten. That's the warranty is 15 years, and that's complete warranty. I don't believe we had a leak on the main gym. Now I was telling Mr. Evans the small roof above the cafeteria and the small roof above the band room, that's old. That's probably 95 on both sides. Yeah. So that, ever since those air conditioner, those rooftop units fell in 13, seems like at least once a year we've got to call someone to patch it. So we do have these once in a while in the cafeteria.
Was it the leak in the auditorium room?
I just remember we were discussing the after snow.
It was an auditorium.
Was that the
Yes,
auditorium?
we did, and that was more of a downspout issue. It was a roof issue, and the water was puddling on the top of the water was puddling on the top of the auditorium. think that's just something you're gonna have, when you have flat roof and ice, large accumulations of snow and ice on the building, it slowly melts and puddles. So about 6-7 years ago, I did comb through, and I shared that with Mr. Evans. I combed through old minutes and just kind of got a thorough history of what our roofing situation is. And, our major roofs are the Portia Elementary was built in 90. This portion of the elementary was built in 99. That Quonset building you're not going to get it's a Quonset building, but you're not going to get a shed built with that sturdy, I don't think, in the modern era. So those metal roofs are supposed to be made 50 plus years. And so we've got a lot of life left on our metal roofs. And then the metal roof over the high school, the main L shape of the high school was that of Oman, by out of Lawrence, Kansas. And then they came back, and Mr. Taylor, I think, had them come back, cover up the atrium area in 2004. So those are both metal roofs that probably about halfway, or if even through their lifespan. So there are always things that are going to be things that you're not going to expect. I would say the next big expense is going to be something with the track. Track's going to need some attention, and that's budget.
I was gonna say, other than the sealant and stripping that we already are paying for.
Yeah, that's part of it. If you want to keep that rubber usable, you've got to come in and coat it with it is a epoxy type substance that they put on it. It gives it life. Might do another 8 or 9 years until it gets so brittle that you just have to take it off and put it back out again.
Did we get any other numbers about the locker room?
Anything more than 190.
Okay.
That's,
I guess.
to me, that is.
I know it,
Okay.
but I guess it's still.
What's locker room?
So we just wanted to put in like some of our the central, the towers in the middle, they're kind of getting old and rusty, and the whole idea of congregate showers in this day and age is really not what the kids are comfortable doing anymore, and so you just put in partitions in there. So the boys, they were pretty much not functional. So those have already been switched from center towers to just copper lines and then exterior, so they're just external copper lines that come down. So the boys would just be putting partitions in the shower.
The whole back wall, like when you walk in and open the showers, the whole back wall has individual showers now. So you don't go all circle thing anymore. You go up, everybody has their own shower that you
They do now, because Doug did them last year. So we need to do the same things in the girls, which is almost routine wear and tear type stuff. But if you tag that on with partitions and allow us to do some of the application, we're probably approaching 15,000 or more, and that probably at least wanted to bring the building and grounds committee into the conversation.
Is that 15 to 20 including the?
I think that was like total cost.
Yeah.
And that included some of the work maybe that's already been done.
I thought that took out the 20.
It
I was
did,
gonna
okay.
say,
I thought it hit. I think you used like 12,900 number that did not include
Okay.
what had already been done.
I always like to add a few thousand onto every number. So I gotta really touch off on the depreciation transfer question. Did you have any more that you wanted to say on any of that? Didn't cut you off, but I told you.
No, I don't think so. The lease, I don't know if the lease, the bond, the details on that. But it's for 10 years
Mhm.
right now. You can't pay off early until after 5.
Correct.
You make your payments in.
He said we could do a shorter call, but it's gonna lower, or it's gonna raise interest rates. 4.9. And we couldn't pay it off in less than 5 years anyway, so you might as well maximize your, if you wanted to go with finance, you might as well go with 5 years. But with 3 cents, you're just not gonna pay it off.
10 years, you mean?
You might as well go with the 5-year first, 5-year call on the first bond.
With your sheet here, did you split out, looks like QC Puff here?
I did. I just separated out just for ease, to show that we maintain a balance for contingencies, and that's not set. That can be adjusted. I mean, the board could decide they want to go after 500,000 in financing and to reduce that down. Or you can even try to squeeze out a little bit and borrow less money with the idea that you're not going to run into major issues down the road.
So I got some response from Greg. 2 12.5-ton units will handle, that's what it is, it's 12.5. I thought we bumped it up just a little, 25 tons total. 2 12.5-ton units will handle the loads 90% of the time. During events in the summer, say August and September, you'll want to pre-cook the main gym to about 68 or 70 before a large crowd enters. But even then, there's way better than what you have now. The plans and the project is set up to add 2 more units in the future. They find out that's not enough.
We've literally cooled that gym, cooling the lunchroom and putting fans, and just blowing the air, just let them overrun in there to blow air into the gym.
It just doesn't hold. When you get that place packed, it just can't, that's not enough.
Well, it's not designed, you know,
Right.
that's kind of just a workaround to make it more appealing in there for events. You guys probably already know all my thoughts on this, but I think, well, with the boiler, for instance, we have that in 2028 on the agenda anyway. So with the quote that came in with 500,000, we had budgeted 680 just for the BRF system. So it's already less than adding that, and the boiler's already less than what we originally had budgeted for that. I think the boiler's 50 years old. I think we're having massive problems if that goes down. And we're gonna have to make really quick decisions to do it. And I don't think we'll probably get a cheaper quote to do it than now on that. And if we're looking at doing it in 2 years, is it that big of a deal to do it now instead of waiting the 2 years and hoping that there's not an issue? Personally, I would say we move forward with that. The gym, as you said, do we want air conditioning in the gym at some point or not, basically? And I think eventually that gym is going to have air conditioning in it. Every school around here has, we're the only one that doesn't. Whether it's this board or the next board, I think at some point that gym will have air conditioning on it. I think we'll be saving the school money. If we do it now, I think we're probably never going to get it this cheap. So I know I used to be on a city council, and I used to be in charge of the swimming pool. And about I don't know how many years ago, 7, 8 years ago, I think, they had problems with the pool and the liner. And at the time, nobody wanted to spend the money to fix the pool correctly. So we ended up just kind of halfway doing it the cheapest way absolutely possible. And the city is still messing with those issues from back then. This pool is still messed up and not done correctly. It's just an ongoing thing. I think I'm a true believer of doing stuff correctly the first time and have it done and out of the way personally. I would also like to hear from everybody else's perspective. I feel like I've talked the most about this, but I'd really like to hear what everybody else's opinions are. I know this is a tough setting to discuss tough things, like this, but I'd like to hear every board member's opinion on this.
I'll be honest, I'm not comfortable with it. I feel like it's a want and not a need. I feel like buildings are old. There's a pretty good possibility that we might need to do something classroom-wise, new building-wise, and if we're gonna do that, and I don't want to put air conditioning in a gym and then you need to do a new structure. Why not look into maybe fundraising and grants and things for the future of maybe building a second gym with possibility of classrooms, because we might need that someday. I guess it makes me nervous because we have those facilities and any huge thing could pop up at any time that we have to spend the money on, and I just feel like that's more important than we want. But I'm conservative. So that's where I'm at right now. I can see justification in a boiler if we're looking to do it in a couple of years and it's already 50-some years old, and I'm okay with that one. I just don't really feel like the air conditioning part is something that we really need for a few years. I mean, yes, it'd be great. It'd be nice. And I don't disagree with that. But I also have sat through many graduations, many volleyball games, many activities, and it really isn't, it's not comfortable, but it's not doable.
I want to make a clarification about the boiler.
And we're not the only school. I believe schools
Most of them have air in theirs. It's just a ventilation system. I asked.
And I don't know what that would be a
See, they were
possibility
telling me that, yeah, okay.
to have vents put in that we can, and that's what they had at Haskell years ago when I was in school. And it was amazing when you opened up the vents and turned on that vent, like an outside vent. And it's kind of like an attic vent where you turned on the fan and it sucked all that hot air out. And it was amazing how much that actually helped.
They put in those ventilations. I remember them getting put in when I was in high school at Williston, and I clarified with a couple on board members that it's not air conditioned, it's just big
Now,
ventilation.
there is a huge difference in the fact that they have 2 walls inside their school building
Yes.
and 2 walls that are outside walls, where ours are all outside walls. That makes a big difference.
Well, I wasn't just pulling, I wasn't,
No,
I'm not gonna say names, but I was told by pretty credible sources that it was air conditioning. So
Yeah.
Well, that was too, so.
Yeah.
I was told that they were just ventilation system, which that's how I understood it when they got put in. Well, that was 20 years ago when I was being told initially, but even recently I asked a few different sources and they all said it was so, but personally, absolutely a high school boiler. I would be okay with it. Again, our school is small, like, you know, I think about even space-wise, we don't have a lot of extra space. We've talked about the needs for sped, where to put those kids. I guess I would much rather be conservative and not do AC in the gym and save it for a couple years, even if it's 5 years. Look at grants, look at fundraising overall, you know, and look at maybe possibly building a second gym with classrooms, so that way on rainy days or snowy days, our kids can the second gym instead of being stuck in that classroom, because there's nowhere to go. And maybe that's not happening all the time, but that's just me personally. AC in the gym would be great. It gets really hot in there and really uncomfortable. You know, a couple years ago we had to do this program in there, and it was hot and people were close, and it was kind of gross because everybody was sweating. But you know what? And I'm pretty sure everybody remembers it. So, you know, that's where I'm at.
Want to clarify, I don't think that we could move forward with the boiler portion, because that is just for boilers for the classroom. It doesn't include, you would need a lot more tonnage if, it's BTUs of heat to replace the boiler if it's going to be the primary heat in the gym too.
Gotcha.
So I don't think we could, you can't approve the boiler portion of it tonight without the air conditioning. That's why it's at alternate. Yeah.
So when you say the classrooms, you mean like band?
Right, yes, I'm sorry, yes, I need just the rooms, sorry, about that. The rooms to the west, gymnasium, just those 6 classrooms, the band room, the 2 locker rooms, the teenage room, the PE room, and, also that is all this proposal is for, and to fix the fan coil units in the rooms. It's to do repair on the fan coil unit. So it would be just, you couldn't, the 150, it's gonna be a bigger number to do boilers for the whole gym. It's gonna, because you're tripling the area that you're heating.
To do it by itself.
To do it by itself. And I think that's why I have a bigger number in there. I think I kind of just guessed at 150 maybe. It's in the packet. 120. Is it? Maybe it was a little lower. Okay, so it wasn't enough cushion. But I suspect it'll be bigger. I don't know how much that changes for boilers, because I don't know, but it's gonna be a bigger number. It can't be, because that's not what the scope of this project is. The scope of this project is to replace the boiler for the rooms that aren't getting heated by rooftop units. It's assuming the gym would get its from the 25 tons of refrigerant that are going on the roof.
And are you still hard in water too?
Yes.
Well, if 3 girls are hard nosed, and it's not gonna matter. We'll just have to figure out with how we want to fund the high school HVAC thing. It's pretty much it then, correct? What's your opinion on UC Puff or taking it out of our funds?
Do you want to, as a matter of procedure? We probably should point out that the motion.
I don't have a motion.
Yeah.
We would need a motion, or it's going to say the issue dies due to lack of motion.
What do
Before
you,
we can go on.
you need a motion?
Or the motion, or it dies due to lack of motion.
Like you can make a motion and we vote on it. if it gets seconded. Otherwise, it's not.
They'll just die, I guess, or. I guess I'm confused. We can't move on without a motion.
We either need to, the president either has to send you guys with the lack of a motion, or we vote on it.
You guys want to do it? It doesn't matter to me.
If we know. Do that.
Okay, so we'll move on with a lack of a motion. All right, on to B, consider adopting a resolution to authorize the issues of a qualified capital purpose undertaking fund, PC Puff bond financing for a term not to exceed 10 years for the purpose of addressing actual or potential environmental hazards, accessibility barriers, school safety, infrastructure concerns, and within one or more existing school buildings or school grounds of school buildings controlled by the district or presented and not.
Here, I believe, since we couldn't exceed, if there was a desire to do this, you could exceed the amount that's already been approved, the 501,000.
Does anybody have an opinion on QC Puff or the general fund?
It would be, not general fund, it would be QC Puff for building fund, and
That's what I meant. Sorry.
I don't feel like we should go full QC Puff just because we have numbers for this reason. I mean, not full the other way either, but I think we should do a mixture of the two. Because it's there for this kind of reason.
Are we voting for that? I guess 70, I don't know, 70-30, I'm just throwing numbers out there. Like that.
So just to clarify, you're talking about funding the high school VRF with the QC Puff, or you're talking about a portion of it? Is that right?
Portion of it
Portion of it.
is what I think.
Okay.
How does that work with that? Given the details of what that funding is for, I know QC Puff, you have to do an itemized list of what you're actually, that money is going towards. How do you do that with a half a system?
we would take out the references to the gym and make sure the dollar amount doesn't exceed the amount for specifically
501.
the 501 portion. And so what it does is protects your cash reserves.
Is there a minimum amount you can take out or not?
No, but at some point it becomes
More work and.
if you're not at least into 6 digits, it's probably not worth your time.
Right,
Yeah.
Anybody else?
So one of the challenges, it looks to me like if you spend everything that's scheduled for 2026, excuse me, that's 791,000. That's counting 150,000 for a boiler. So I'm trying to take that out. So if you do that and you actually spend it. Yeah, 640, 641. So I think the question becomes, do you even need it? Do you even need to borrow money?
That's what my question was.
Well, I did some,
Depends how much you want, if you want to keep your reserves, I guess.
so half a million is about 1.63 cents at current valuation over 10 years on top of what you're gonna levy anyway. Comparable to what, less than what we've been doing before we got the previous QC bill paid off. Rough math, 411, I just jotted that down using Mr. Evans' number on his spreadsheet. It'd be about 1.35 cents on a 10-year financing.
Per quarter, what you were saying?
That would have been, that 1.35 was for 411,000, and I was just doing that based off of that number there.
So you're thinking we don't even need to finance, is that what you're saying? I mean, it's kind of because of the,
Yeah, me personally, I would lean more to the QC puff. I guess I would keep all of our,
like if we're not gonna go the full amount.
I would keep our reserves where they're at and do the full amount for the entire thing personally. But
And just save what we have in there.
for the things that could pop up the classroom. That amount would be less than what we have been paying in the past already, so. The last QC puff just expired, didn't it? Or-
Mhm. So this is the first year this getting anything. for
This is the
QC.
cheapest it's probably ever, or it's been a really long.
The levy?
Yeah.
Probably ever in the history of the district. It's not total dollar amount, but in terms of levy, because one time, every district relied entirely on their local levy for, and that's when you had $2, $3, $4 levies, because some districts just had very small valuation to draw.
Our valuation's going up too as well, correct?
That's what Stephanie kind of alluded to that it would probably, but I told her I wouldn't hold her to it. But the numbers she gave me when I calculated it seemed like it was in that 7% ballpark. That's Stephanie Cass. Not the Stephanie.
The legwork's all been done pretty much for the QC puff too, so. Thoughts? Somebody else's opinion. We got one?
We have to have a motion before we discuss all that.
We probably
Okay,
should, but
that's
I mean,
how we're always
without,
supposed to do it.
probably should have a motion, but
A motion for what?
we're supposed to have a motion before we discuss anything that's. on the agenda. Sometimes
Don't.
don't.
Well, that's partly my fault. I'll take full responsibility. I should have worded them, especially the first one, I should in the agenda item, discuss and then consider action. That's on me. That's how it was in my mind. I apologize.
So what do we need a motion for then? I'll say it, but,
Oh, it's kind of hard because we don't have a total, so. You can make your motion to be whatever we can discuss and then amend your motion at the
So you could just read this and insert a dollar amount at the end. In place, not to exceed, instead of the amount specified, say a dollar amount at that point.
$1 amount.
That one.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Oh boy, I gotta read all of this. Can I just do it as written? With a dollar amount?
I think you're supposed to say it, sorry.
I'll make a motion, to consider adopting a resolution to authorize the issuance of a qualified capital purpose undertaking fund, QCPUF, bond financing for a term not exceeding 10 years for the purpose of addressing actual and potential environmental hazards, accessibility barriers, school safety, infrastructure concerns, and or mold which exist within one or more existing school buildings or the school grounds of existing school buildings controlled by the district as presented, and to not exceed the amount specified, which is $501,550.
I'll second it, so we can talk about this.
We have a motion and a second. Mark,
Discussion now?
discussion.
All right. So what does everybody else think? I personally think we should keep our reserves. If we're gonna go this route, everybody's conservative, then we keep our reserves and
That would be the conservative route. I have more interest, yes.
When does this have to be like decided by, like, when's our bid contract for like, them knowing how we're paying or us having to make?
Oh,
as far as
the way the contract was written, the bid wouldn't come due until, or the payment wouldn't come due, I don't think, until the project is complete. Now, some we have done it in installment payments, but in the past, but I think the actual language of the contract says upon completion, and with Ruts being, they've got pretty good cash flow. I don't think payments are gonna be a huge thing.
just, this is a bigger deal to discuss, or to discuss it tonight, but I didn't know if we actually had to vote on it tonight, you know, if we can. Got it.
You would have to decide before the budget. You'd need to levy for it.
Correct, before August, our budget hearing.
Whenever usually it's late August, early September.
Okay.
We didn't set a date for that. Mr. Evans to pick a date.
I would rather, if we're going to take out some, to not take out the full 501, to be honest, if we are going to keep. So, but I would rather do some of it, not the full 501.
And I was completely okay with doing the full amount for the QC Puff, doing, you know, adding both of those extra bids in there. I'm not sure with the 501 if it's worth, you know, purchase the units in the high school, honestly.
So not taking up any, just using our own funds. I guess, not to put you on the spot, but like looking at projected things and the financial situation that we're in, I guess, you know, this is something that you're going to have to manage. Granted, we get to make the final decision,
Mhm.
but I would like to hear your input on it. And
So I always like to have emergency money that covers something that you're going to do, or to know what you're going to do with the money to have a plan for it. And so I would probably, I don't know, if there's not a plan, and if we're talking about additional classrooms and additional gym, 500,000 doesn't touch it. I mean, you're barely going to get the architect work done. I mean, so I don't know. I would probably agree that I don't know that it's worth doing. That's my honest opinion.
And if we need to borrow more for something else later on down the road, if we already have a QC pup, we can't have a second QC pup.
Right.
so
So, I mean, we would be locked into it for 5 years.
Mhm.
At least, if we could pay off early in our 5 years, otherwise we'd be locked out of borrowing for 10 years.
QC Puff is always specific to certain things that you are using for. So,
Which makes sense, but I wouldn't say, yeah, taking 500,000 out of this number is a conservative route necessarily, though. Not saying it's bad, of course, but I wouldn't say. That's drop rate significant.
I would either do all or none. No, I don't think I would split it. I'd like to try and do a small amount for 10 years.
When you think about it, you can't do two, that makes sense. If we also
You
are
can
talking
go
about-
back later and catch the remaining amount. You can layer your QC puff. So let's say you do 500,000 and you got 1.6, you could go back and get the 1.37 later. I'm not advocating one way or the other. I've heard of districts doing it.
We're capped at how much money we get for our QC Puff. We can only get 912,000 in current evaluation. So it's not like we can get a QC Puff for $3 million to pay for a new gym type of thing.
If you recall, a few of you, this was like brand new stuff for Julia. She weren't here yet. So in the packet, I do have my study I threw together in February-ish. Well, I thought I had it. But one of the components, it was page 4 or 5, it lined out what some of my financing models were. Of course, at the time, I didn't realize that government entities got
That's a 6.9 or
the
something.
smaller interest rates, so I used a bit higher interest rates, but it kind of gives you an idea on financing, really what you gotta do if you want to get significant dollar amounts for some structural type things.
Something like that. Also, like a gym or something that's way bigger decision. It's not something that they need to be on a ballot or something too.
Well, that would have to go, yes, that would have to go to a ballot.
Is there any more discussion? Motion, or do you want to go right to voting?
If it fails, then we have to pay for it out of our funds, right? Motion.
For Bobby to come back? Or do you want to go ahead and vote?
Yeah, I think.
we'll go ahead and we'll vote. To use, the full amount for CC Cup for $501,050 as motioned by Mark, seconded by Hannah. Bobby?
No.
Julia?
No.
Mark?
Yes.
Jason, no. Hannah?
No.
Number 5 on our agenda.
Make a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
By Mark. Bobby, Hope,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Jason, yes, Hannah,
Yes.
and Bobby.
Yes.
We will adjourn. 7:09.
Brian, is this it?
This is it. I will be here a couple more times, or at least one more time this week for sure. This is it. Just had a nice little, small policy update for you. It was only 22
Oh,
pages.
I started it, I'm like maybe a little over half.
I did get, I don't know if you read through it all, got feedback from Steve Williams on the student appearance, the new dress code. Sounds like they're going on for the second.
I haven't gotten that far
I'll
yet,
say,
but,
but, I added those
but
comments
yeah,
in
I
today.
opened it up and I went, ooh.
Todd, thanks for coming up.
Yeah, thank you.
You know what I'm hard to ask?
I was like,
Brian?